button.
Hi, welcome to the Stitch TV show. I'm Lan.
And I'm Pam. We're happy you're joining us today. The Stitch is an online quilt talk show. It is the perfect soundtrack for your sewing room or, mowing the lawn or doing dishes or folding laundry.
Because of podcasts.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, in addition to our talk shows, we also post tutorial videos, virtual stitch-ins, and book clubs. You can learn more at thestitchtvshow.com.
Our show today is brought to you by our friends at EnMart and QT Fabrics. You can learn more about them in the link in the show notes.
So we are joined by some of the newer fabric from QT Fabrics, which is the Rhythm Line by Dan Morris from QT. It's a very attractive bundle.
Yes, and I think they'll be seeing this soon in an upcoming tutorial video. Or did that already happen?
Well,
no.
For them, it will have already happened. For us, it happens in 2 days.
Okay. This is the...
Then, or now, then?
This is the timely, what do you call it?
Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly ball of stuff?
Yes, there you go.
It's a Doctor Who reference.
I knew it was a Doctor Who reference, but I never remember it well.
Well, we'll talk more about where they'll see that in just a minute. But first, we're also joined by the EnMart cotton.
I know.
Ultra bright.
Yes, and this is cotton.
Yes.
Thread. I'm honestly, I know this is part of our display, but I'm gonna steal this.
Boom.
Good. There's more. No, because I need some thread to sew. So I know
Shocking.
It's shocking. You need thread.
Sometimes we actually get to sew on things.
I do,
which is what I did yesterday.
I've been playing with some stuff. So we'll talk about it.
All right.
Today we're going to be talking about rotary cutting mats and designing quilts for shows, and we're joined by our newest pattern, Get Spooled, and you can get the digital pattern for this 2-block applique quilt at shop.thestitchtvshow.com.
So, related to what I have actually been stitching is some of this fabric. So QT sent us the bundle for a project, and I may have cut off some strips for a different project altogether because I loved it so much. And that project is a new sample of Lucky Star, which is a quilt-along that when this episode drops will have been underway for a few weeks, but it's not too late to jump in. And you've done a lovely Shop My Stash video around pulling other fabrics
that go with this
to coordinate with this line.
Somehow I didn't get strips cut for me.
Not yet.
Oh,
well,
okay,
and this
good.
is going back with me just in case I goof up. I'm mostly done putting the top
I do
together.
want some of each of these, so you have to share. She has to share. Or I'm telling Tiffany on you. Anyway. So, yes, this is, that Shop My Stash video was really fun to do because it was kind of, I like challenges like that. I like it when somebody says, what goes with this? I don't know. Let's see,
Yeah. So the pattern's available on our shop at shop.thestitchtvshow.com. And we've got videos dropping around pulling fabrics, cutting your own jelly roll strips because it is a jelly roll friendly quilt, but you can tell not a jelly roll. So we've used yardage to make our sample. We've also got a video on 4 different ways to master the sew and flip method, which I recorded yesterday.
Oh, really?
Oh, and there's like scientific results. I grade myself and my ability to execute all 4.
Oh, I can't wait to see.
And then there was like a surprise of which way I actually used to put my sample together.
All right. I didn't know there were 4 different ways to do this.
The first way, which is the way I usually do, is the stitch and hope method, which, as one might imagine, is as successful as you think.
I think that's my method.
Stitch and hope.
You don't. I think, all right, I can't wait to see this because I don't know these methods.
Yeah. 4 total. It's different. And I think that particular video drops at the end of August 2019, but you can find that in our feed.
I may be able to find it before then.
Maybe. It's not edited yet. It's still on my laptop right now.
Okay.
But it'll be up ideally later today for you to see.
Oh, good.
But yeah, like a whole big thing. We've got quilting designs. Oh, and then there's going to be, I just was like, we need a bonus video.
I don't know what the bonus
Well, so the
is.
construction method for making the blocks and mitering borders, which is another thing I think people struggle with. There'll be a video on that too.
I love the miter borders on that quilt.
Yes. So there's a lot of like bonus pieces you end up with. And so the bonus video will be like uses for all these bonus pieces that you get through the construction of this
Oh,
quilt.
right. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
a little fun. bonus.
Now, and just to remind them, the quilt pattern is called Lucky Star.
Yes. And it comes in
So-
3 sizes. There's a couch, a twin, and a queen size. And you can make the couch in the twin with a single commercial jelly roll or, cut your own strips. We even got a question about could you use fat quarters for it?
Sure.
And absolutely you can.
Yeah, just cut 2 strips out of it.
Yeah, and that gives you the equivalent of
One long
one
strip.
long strip. So
2 strips out of the 22-inch
Right,
side,
not the
22-inch side, not the 18.
yes. All right. So speaking of cutting, our first
Yes.
topic, rotary cutting mats.
Rotary cutting mats.
Much like our last show when we talked about rotary cutters, and we're like, how have we been doing this for years and not talked about rotary cutters? Likewise, rotary cutting mats, because there's a lot of tips on like keeping them long lived,
Okay.
which
'Cause
I have.
that's-
Maybe you don't.
I didn't think of that. I
Oh.
love how we never talk about this, and then it's like I didn't think of what she's going to talk about. So for me, it was size, like different sizes and how rotary cutting mats work are probably some of the things that I consider. Like if you have the money, buy a mat that is as big as your table, not part of your table, the whole thing. And it will change your world.
Oh yes,
It will totally change your world.
I have a 4-foot by 8-foot table in my sewing room.
Right.
And one end is dedicated to pressing, and then the rest of it is sort of like piles of stuff and my cutting mat. And
Right.
it's 70 inches wide because I've got like the 3 mat set that kind of
Lock together.
Well, they don't lock together necessarily. There's like little pieces of hardware you use, but I ended up using some double-sided Scotch tape to stick it to the table so they don't shift around.
So what I did, and I currently have a cutting table that was produced by a sewing company that designs them, and they design mats that go on the whole table. But prior to that, I had a table that Mike built for me, and it was an odd shaped. So I went online and found drafting mats with a grid, and that was my cutting mat. And I got to order it as big as I wanted it so it fit the exact size of the table. And once you have one that fits your whole table, it just changes the way you cut, and it's really awesome. So they're more expensive, but if you get the drafting mat, which will be plastic, not these self-healing. You have self-healing.
Yes.
Yeah, they're plastic, but honestly, the one I have that was produced by, the table company's plastic, and it's fine. I think it does dull your blades a little bit more faster than the self-healing one does. So that's your downfall. But because then you're never worried about I'm going to scrape a table or I'm going to
accidentally like gouge.
Yeah, exactly. So big mats are big. So, and there's a difference between
Breaking news, big mats are big.
deal.
Big mats are a big deal.
That would be the other.
Yes.
part
There was
of
a
the
word missing. Sorry, I don't always
She
mean
does this to me all
poke
the
at you.
time.
But
So no,
size does matter. Why do we use a tiny mat?
this is one of my favorite cutting mats.
I know I use mine on every quilt.
I do on every quilt is a little cutting mat.
What do you use yours little tiny cutting mat for?
Binding.
Oh, yes, mine too.
It's because we're cool. Yes, this makes sense for binding. It's just you need a little small mat to slip right under that, and it allows you to cut the binding really well.
When you're joining the two ends. Except I don't even use that side. I use that side, and I have drawn some custom markings on mine.
Oh, for how wide your...
Yes, because
That
I
makes sense.
typically cut my binding 2 1/8 inches. So I have drawn on the gray side like 2 lines, 2 1/8 inch apart, and then another line perpendicular that I line the edge of the quilt up to when I flip my ends together.
That's a good idea.
And we even have I think we've got a video on that.
Yeah, I think we do too.
I know it was on Instagram. I will double check and see if it's on our channel.
But you can usually get these fairly inexpensively.
Oh, yes.
And I know they put these on sale at big box stores quite often, actually.
Yes.
So I use that a lot, the little one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other, well, what do you...
I love a rotating mat.
Okay, so I have 2 rotating mats.
I do as well.
I actually have 3, but...
I have one about this size, but mine is gray.
Right. I have the bigger one. This is a 12-inch one.
Now, the deal is it comes apart.
Yes.
And it rotates because there's this circle thing. And they nest. But because they come apart, that means they come apart. And sometimes mine slips out of place.
Yeah, they do.
Now, I did have one get ruined because it was left in a hot car, and then it warped, and it would never seat again to rotate, and it was all wobbly. And it went to go live on a farm.
That was one of my tips. It was all wobbly. So we got rid of it.
It went to go live on a farm, Lynn.
Oh, okay.
It's very happy frolicking in a field somewhere right now.
Really?
Yes.
Somehow I think it got cut up like at the end
Now,
of
why
Toy
do you need
Story.
a rotating mat?
If you're doing like some of our patterns, this one in particular, it tells you to cut a block on the diagonal and turn and cut it on the other diagonal, and this helps.
It helps. So you don't have to move the fabric and keep your pieces together.
Yeah, so you just turn this.
And you don't have to like turn your body on a weird angle.
Turn this, cut, and then it keeps that. And this pattern actually does that. So that's one of the reasons that I like a good rotating mat. And honestly, if you've watched any of or taken any of our classes, this is the mat I use in class that I use on the table. All right. The next one I have, I've got too much stuff over here, is another rotating mat. And this was sent to us by a company. Dun, dun, dun. It's Martelli's.
Ooh, it also comes apart.
It comes apart too,
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this has a nice gridded mat as well.
Right.
Now, for this one, I will say the benefit of the square one, you can fit a 12.5-inch block on it. For this one, the max you can go is about 10.5, a finished 10-inch block. So it's just a little bit different, but it's...
Which is good for trimming up blocks, too. That's why you want a bigger one, so you can trim up the edge of blocks, which I cover extensively in some other videos. I know we've got some of that.
New mat smell.
It's new mad smell. The thing with this one that's kind of nice, and I just haven't used this one a whole lot yet.
It comes with a pressing surface.
It comes with a pressing surface that you can put on it, and then you can press on it as well.
Yes.
So rotating mats are helpful. Do I do the lion's share of cutting on this? No. To me, they're specialty.
Let's talk about rotary cutting mats for classes when you have to travel for a retreat or for a class. What size do you take with you for that?
The biggest one that'll fit in my car. I don't know. I take the
24 by 36?
Yeah.
And do you just leave it loose and floppy and hope it doesn't like...
Dear Lord, no. Here's how you do it. We live in Atlanta. It is hot 8 months out of the year here, at least.
Sometimes 9.
Yeah, let's be honest. So if you are packing your car for a retreat or you're taking your cutting mat somewhere, it goes on the bottom in your back of your... I have an SUV. It goes in the bottom of my SUV, right next. It's the bottom, the flat. Everything's flat. That's where I put it. And then I put stuff on top of it. How do I know this?
Did your rotary cutting mat go to live on a farm too, Lynn?
So I've always been conscious of putting it on the bottom, and then we were coming back, and I think I was not thinking or whatever, and I just threw it on the top.
Oh, no.
It melted to the shape of the sewing machine and all the other stuff that was in the car.
I've done something a little different.
Oh, really?
So I have...
You didn't melt? I am telling you.
I melted a smaller one.
It was a big one. I was not happy when I got it's still upstairs because I can't. It's worthless, though. It really is. I think, though, today I could probably put it out on the driveway and hope that it would...
Reset?
No, sometimes you can. You can save them. So I think I'm going to put it out on the driveway. I will test this and let y'all know. I'm going to put it out on the driveway. I'll put something on top of it and see if I can.
Because in real time, it's
hot
August.
Yeah,
right
in
now.
real time, it's supposed to be 3 digits today.
Ooh,
That's what I heard.
good times.
So, anyway.
Which 3 digits, Lynn? No, just kidding.
101.
So I did something different with my usual class travel mat. I have a very small one that kind of fits in my sewing machine carrying case, but it's not useful if I have to cut units for
Right.
an actual quilt project. But I have a 24 by 36 mat, and I went to a big box hardware store where they have, this isn't plywood. This kind of looks like butcher block, but it's a piece of wood that also measures 24 by 36. And I used some kind of crazy glue that my husband had. And glued the mat.
Like you didn't know.
It's been so long since I did this. I am not sure what kind of glue it was.
Okay. I was like,
but it's a glue that bonds like the mat surface to the wood. And so I have glued my mat to wood. And then I got a little handle that is like a buck in a different aisle and screwed that into the side, which is why you can't use plywood for this because the way that plywood is made doesn't work well for screwing stuff into the edge of the mat. And so now it's got a little carrying handle too.
I think I've seen you with that.
Yes, you have.
Oh, that's very cool. I've done that with I took plywood or whatever and wrapped batting around it and put a handle on it and maybe it wasn't plywood, I don't know what it was, but put a handle on it for iron and put canvas around it, batting canvas, and then have a little ironing board that I can carry.
How do you feel about the mats that are dual purpose specifically for travel and retreats, where I've got one where one side it's a mat, the other side it's batting. There's some that will fold open. So like one side is a mat and one side is a pressing surface.
That one's probably better than the one that I have. I have the one side's a pressing surface and the other side's a padded mat.
It does not lend itself to accuracy in cutting because of the pressing.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. And so what I've done, if you'll remember last episode or episodes ago where we talked about rotary cutting and I talked about the serpentine kind of rotary, that's the mat that I use for that because I'm never going to use it to cut accurate things. But if I use that mat to cut, I don't care if it's gouged because it does this anyway. So I do have a special mat that I use for that, and that happens to be the one. So, yeah, I don't like those. Now, if it opens up,
it's different. And
it's totally different because if this is flat on a flat surface,
totally stable.
Totally stable. But if it's got any kind of padding, yeah, it's yucky. Now, I've not used one that's butted up together. Like you, do you not have any problem with that?
I don't have one of those. I would be leery of getting your iron too close to the cutting mat side of it and warping that. But I've seen other people use them in class.
Well, yeah, that. But no, the kind that has the puzzle piece and they kind of snap together. Isn't that what yours is?
No.
Okay. I've not used those. I'm always thinking I wouldn't want to cut on that because you can nick your blade. My brain says I could nick a blade or the fabric's going to fall into that crevice and that thread won't cut because it's been pressed down into an open space and it doesn't have the resistance to it that allows the blade to cut the thread. So I've always been leery of those. And maybe there's no problem with them and I'm just not used them, but I don't like those. That's why I'm saying get as big a mat as your table to cover the whole thing.
Well, so knowing that those big mats are very expensive.
The drafting mats are a lot cheaper.
Yes.
BT dubs.
But how do you extend the life of those mats? How do you keep them lasting?
You're going to know this.
Notes.
Yeah. I don't know. The big one that I have, I've had for years. When I bought the table, I've probably had the table, I want to say I bought it. I judge everything by events, just so you know. I'm really bad with time.
I've had it for as long as I've known you. So
yeah,
it's
so
at least
probably 10 years. Yeah, 10 or 12 years. And I just, like last year or the year before, turned it around because where I stand and cut, I was noticing I was getting a really consistent grooves. Even though I use my ruler to cut and not the mat, so I'm not always cutting on a specific line. Like you'll go to quilt stores, and if they're using a mat to cut, that 18-inch line
and the 36-inch line
is always jacked up. Unless they've just replaced it. So I don't cut on a certain line, but I notice where I stand, that whole area kind of started to warp a little up because it had been cut on so much. So I actually turned it around. Unfortunately, the company did metric on one side and...
Oh, no.
Yeah. And where I do use the ruler on the mat is like when I'm measuring backing. You know, I need this to be 36 or 40 or whatever.
Well, that's 36.
No, 36 is here to here.
Oh, no, it's nose if you snobby and you turn away.
That's because you have longer arms than I do. It's here. See my nose? It's here.
Science.
It's here. On me, it's here. On her, it's another. On you, it will be something else.
It might be your ear.
Could be. Or chin. I don't know.
Same as nose. Well,
it's funny how
ideally.
we know that, though. Like, I know a yard is as long as I can lift to right there. Anyway, what was I telling you?
Mats.
Oh.
Imperial versus metric.
Yeah. So what I did was you can get tape.
Oh, yeah.
With the Imperial, and I turned my thing around and I retaped it with the Imperial one so that I had the markings, so I at least knew when I was cutting longer borders or backing or something like that kind of thing. I could measure things.
So I have 2 more tips on extending the
Turn
life.
it around.
So turn it around.
Turn it
Absolutely.
over.
Turn it over, but then sometimes you don't have lines
The grid,
on the back.
yeah. I do like a grid. I don't, just to reference things.
Yeah. I have used, it's back to school time for us.
Yes.
So pink pearl erasers, or just pink erasers, but pearl is a specific brand. You can use that to rub it over an area where you've got fibers embedded. Maybe your blade was a little dull.
But that works on this, not the plastic.
It will still pull out of the plastic too.
Okay.
Because I will cut batting on my mat, and that gets real fuzzy and embedded in there. But occasionally I get smaller, thread fibers embedded. But just lightly rubbing, you don't have to try to erase your mat. No, just a gentle rubbing, and it's got the consistency and the friction to pull those fibers out. And then you just come behind with a vacuum and vacuum up the, as we say, eraser goobies.
Eraser goobies?
Yes.
Okay, here's a pro tip. Don't do messy projects on your mat that then stain your mat. Like with inks and paints, and protect your mat. Not that I've ever done that. Yeah. Totally have. Like, oh my gosh, I stained the mat. Then I'm scrubbing it, trying to get because you don't want that to get on your fabric later.
Right.
Just saying.
Well, another
Don't
option
look closely
is,
at my mat later.
sometimes your mat just needs to relax. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your bathtub, and you're going to fill it with warm water and a little bit of liquid detergent. You're going to maybe light a candle, maybe put on some soft music, and then you're going to let your mat soak. And that's going to, and it warm, not hot water.
Yes.
Warm water.
And this will.
And then it's going to help your mat relax. It's going to clean it a little bit. Going to give it a
maybe
couple
I
little
can try that
washcloth.
with the jacked up one upstairs. Will
Yes.
it relax it and flatten it out?
It might need the driveway treatment.
I think the driveway we're going to start with.
But a nice warm soapy bath is like a manufacturer's recommendation to clean your mat. Now you don't have to do it every month for
no.
once a year. It's bath time. A little Saturday night, a little soft music.
Can you
A
imagine?
little Sade. Maybe Enya. I'm not judging.
Can you imagine all the mats in a bubble bath? Your
Yes.
husband walks in like, what are you doing?
Little scrub.
Anyway.
And then you drain the water out. Let it dry flat. Don't let it dry in the bathtub.
No.
Because you don't need a
Then it
toboggan.
would need the driveway treatment.
Then you need the driveway treatment.
We'll see if it works. I think it will, but I don't know.
Got anything else to say about mats?
Size, plastic, self-healing, drafting, rotating, heat, put on the bottom when travel. No, I'm good.
We could have just done that segment in like 30 seconds.
And
we
we're
just
done.
wasted like 20 minutes.
We never waste time. We never waste time.
Oh, I would say like 5 to 10% of our show is wasting time. Maybe 7%.
That's just because I'm laughing at you usually. All right. So now we're going to take a closer look at Get Spooled, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And so now we're going to talk about designing quilts for shows.
Yes.
All
So we've
right?
talked before about entering quilts in shows, and we kind of just skipped over the whole fact that maybe you might want to put some particular attention on the design. You're like, so you've made a quilt and it's going in a show.
Yeah.
And our favorite book title, Happy Endings, applies here. We will reference you back to that episode.
It is my favorite book title.
It's delightful.
It is perfect.
So, when you're entering quilts into shows, any particular things that you are paying attention to?
The rules.
All important.
Very important.
What kind of rules?
The rules of the show. Well, like, there are certain types
It's like
of...
the rules of Uno. You're down to one quilt, you yell Uno, and if someone catches you, then you have to draw another quilt. Like, of course, the rules of the quilt show. That's where my brain just went up like, Uno. No.
But every show's different.
Yes.
So you should pay attention to whatever show you're getting ready to enter.
Like if it says you can only enter 12 by 12 quilts or 20 by 20.
Or you can only enter 3 quilts or only enter 1 quilt in each category that you enter. You can't enter 5 quilts in the same category. And then you need to pay attention to the category rules. So some categories have size requirements. Some don't. Some categories have, a type of technique requirement. Some don't. Some have copyright rules.
Documentation. And
Documentation. Do you have permission to use this pattern if it's somebody else's pattern? By the way, if you're using any of our patterns, please do so.
Go crazy.
Go crazy.
Enter them all in shows.
Enter them all in shows, and you don't have to have our permission. We love it.
We should probably add that to our website somewhere.
Yeah.
Blanket statement.
Blanket statement. Please use them for yourself, for your friends, for your family, and enter them in shows. I would also, honestly, pay attention to shipping rules.
So here in the United States, shipping rates just changed for large and heavy items.
Oh my gosh.
And I shipped 3 quilts to someone and it cost a lot of money. Like I was expecting to pay maybe $20, $25 and it cost $40.
I shipped a quilt to a show and it was $80 to ship a quilt to a show. That got accepted. So I didn't know it was going to be $80 till I'm at the UPS or wherever I went. I don't remember what shipping company I used. It was probably UPS. But and I handed it to them and they were like, this is $80 because of if it was a more remote place in the country, in the United States, it's a higher cost. And pay attention to the windows and shipping windows. And what I mean by that is they will say in the rules, it has to arrive at our office between this date and this date.
Can't ship it early.
You can't ship it early. You can't ship it after that date. And so you need to time it to where it's the least expensive you can to get it there. So don't show up the day before it's supposed to be there, and you're going to have to pay 2-day shipping charges. So pay attention to that and plan for that cost, because that's not in the rules. Now, sometimes they will allow you to pay for shipping, and then they package it and send it back to you, and you prepay. I have found that to be a good deal sometimes and not a good deal sometimes. Some of them require that you send a prepaid shipping. And some require that they have to be shipped in a certain, boxed in a certain way. I mean, there's a lot in just the shipping. I would definitely, if you have to ship it, if it's local, drop it off.
And be
patient
and polite at the end of the show, because there are volunteers trying their hardest to get the quilts taken down in a respectful way, not like yanking it down, shoving it in a pillowcase. Here you go. Like, they are taking the care for the quilts, and that takes time.
It does. It does.
So take a book.
Just chill.
Get some extra lives on Candy Crush. Like, just pack yourself a snack.
Hand stitching
while you wait.
There you go. Yeah. Yep.
Chat up, make a new friend.
At national shows, it's the same. I have had things shipped back from national shows, and I've picked up at national shows. They all have different rules. Oh, did I tell you this story? So I had a quilt. We had a quilt. It was the transformed quilt that was in Paducah. And I happened to be in Paducah, was going to be in Paducah, and I said I'd pick up the quilt. So when you ship it to an AQS show, you have to tell them, are you picking this up or are they shipping it back? So you determine that before.
You can't just change your mind at the last minute.
You can't change your mind at the last minute because of how their process is. So my driver, I'd lost my purse the week before, like days.
It was stolen. You did not lose it.
It was stolen, yes. My purse days before. So I had to go get a temporary driver's license. And in Georgia, they print it on printer paper, your temporary driver's license.
So you look like you're trying to get into a bar at age 15.
Yeah. And here's my ID. And so that's all I had. And they require that you show ID in order to get the quilt back. And so I showed them this piece of paper with my driver's license printed on it. And she looked at me like, I can't take this. And I went, well, the state of Georgia says that this makes me a driver. And you could see her thinking like, oh my gosh, but all the information was correct. And I'm like, I can show you other credit cards. I can show you, I'll show you whatever you need to see. I want my quilt. So she let me have it. But they actually assigned a person to you.
Oh, that you walk out on the floor.
And they escorted me to, they said, where is your quilt? And then they escorted me to where the quilt was. And then they took it down. They packed it. I wasn't allowed to, I had to stand there and watch them, which I don't know. For me, that's rude. Like, I need to help you. You're doing this for me. I need to help you do this. I don't know. So, yeah, I almost didn't get her quilt back because it was stolen. So, those are my, shipping's a big deal, apparently, in my brain.
So where I went with this topic was, how is your design decisions different when you're deciding on a quilt to hang in a show versus I just need something for the couch? And for me, it's much more about visual impact, because a quilt show is, it's more complicated than an art show, I think, because at an art show, people are standing and they're taking in the art, and they're not necessarily going up and scrutinizing the individual brushstrokes. They're not asking to see the back of the artwork to see if you scribbled and wrote bad words on the back or whatever's going on the back of a piece of art.
You're right.
For quilt shows, you need both the visual impact from far away,
right,
as well as techniques that stand up to close-up scrutiny and inspection.
Because you will see ladies get right up on top of them and go, well, this,
Well, and
now
not just,
sometimes there's,
well, not just ladies, but that's what the judges do too.
right, oh
Like
yeah.
visual impact, and that's what determines if they hold it for consideration for a ribbon.
Right.
So if you can't get the eye from far away,
You're done.
You're
You won't get a
done.
ribbon.
so something like this where there's good contrast, where it's like very obvious
Eye-catching.
what the the color choices work well, things like that, as opposed to some of our other patterns where they are meant to work with prints, and the distinction and edge between one piece and another isn't as important.
Right. Right.
So that to me is where I went of like, oh, you're designing for an art show.
You really
and
are.
legit, like from a galloping horse, it needs to catch your eye.
It does. And it's your best work. So when you're designing, I think you're taking into the whole consideration, not only fabric choices that's catching your eye, but you're also designing the quilting. And
It's not an
what's-
afterthought.
It's not an afterthought. What is this going to be? How is this going to be quilted? What am I going to do in this that will enhance the design? If you're in really competitive shows, and I love an all over meander, but that's not going to stand up in quilting terms against something that's custom quilted that adds interest or adds a secondary pattern or enhances the pattern that's there. I'll be honest, this is not, I love the visual impact of this, but the quilting's not to the level it needs to be for me for a show.
Mhm.
But it wasn't designed for that either. It was designed because I was playing.
Yes.
So,
Well, and I think if we look back to what I had done with Dresden Garden,
right.
where there is an applique design, but then I use the quilting to mimic those shapes in
Right.
contrast thread to kind of repeat that motif. And I think judges really like to see that. In fact, that was one of the comments I got on
Right.
that quilt of like, hey, that was a neat treatment for
Yeah,
your quilt.
it's a secondary design. It enhanced what was there.
Mhm.
So I think you have to look at, and I'm glad you said it's tougher than an art show, because you don't see people at an art show get up close and scrutinize technique like they do at quilt shows.
Mhm.
It's the whole package.
And I think
And your binding better be good.
I wonder too, art shows are attended by more than just artists.
Oh, yeah.
Quilt shows are primarily attended by quilters, and so they're looking to mimic or understand a technique or see how something's done.
Yeah.
And until we get quilt shows that are attended by
And it's coming.
more
it's happening.
than, like the attendance at quilt shows is only 25% quilters, then I think we'll be at that same level. But right now it's like 95%
Right.
quilters
We
are the
actually,
attendees at
and
quilt
that's
shows.
interesting because as the wrap-up meeting for the last quilt show that we were involved in, the marketing company that we hired to help us with the advertising for the quilt show, they had a person on the floor that was asking questions of people who attended the show. And they went through some of the questions like, where did you hear about this? And da-da-da. And I said in a meeting, I said, I want to know if they're quilters.
Mhm.
And they were everybody at the table like, well, that's a good question. And so when they reported back at the wrap-up meeting, they said like 90% of the people who at the show were quilters.
Mhm. And the other 10 were probably husbands or
Right, family.
children or
Yeah, family.
Friends.
Yeah, family and friends who, are interested because they wanted to go see their friend's
Mhm.
quilt or their wife's quilt or their husband's quilt or,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're right. And don't be leery of thinking that you can always figure out the technique.
True.
If you're at a show and because I've had people say, well, this is, hand applique, and I knew it was machine, but they didn't know what to look for. And I not only knew it was machine because I knew what to look for, but I also knew it was machine because I knew the quilter.
Yep.
And it was Sharon Schomburg's technique that it's hard to tell if you don't know what you're looking at. So just don't always assume you know the technique.
Mm-hmm.
But best work. If you're going to design for a quilt show, start local, though. Seriously. I mean, if you've got great stuff, send it to national shows. But if you're just putting your toe in this pond, do local stuff first. Get positive feedback. And honestly, some of the national shows don't have judges. So, as in certified quilt, they don't judge the show and provide feedback. They'll judge the show, but they won't provide feedback. Their judges will just walk through and go 1, 2, 3 in the category, and it doesn't have full written feedback at local shows. So find out about that too.
All right. So, do you have designs on getting into a quilt show? You can let us know. Leave a comment on our blog or in the YouTube episode or in our Facebook group, What's Up Stitches. And that's all we have for this episode. Today's show is made possible by EnMart and QT Fabrics. Find links to these wonderful companies in the show notes for today's episode.
And we'd like to thank 77 Peaches and Big Think Productions for helping produce this stitch. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on the notifications on YouTube, which are up there somewhere.
Or down there.
Okay.
The next virtual stitch-in is Friday, September 13th at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern, broadcast live on our YouTube channel. Our next book club episode is August 23rd.
All those details and more can be found on our website, thestitchtvshow.com, with links to purchase fan gear, quilt patterns, video classes, and tune in next time for more Quilting Chat with Friends.